right, ladies and gents, let's get started. I know we've got a couple of platform committee members that are on their way. We've got some other folks that I know are coming, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So my name is Kevin Olasanoye. I'm the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Democratic Party, and I want to welcome you to the fourth of what I hope is 6 platform committee hearings. Before we get started, a couple of notes. If you don't have in front of you a copy of the agenda as well as a copy of the platform, I will encourage you to grab those documents because they'll be helpful in instructing the way that our commentary will go tonight. I'm joined by several of the members of the platform committee who I'll introduce in a little bit and ask to say a few words, but I wanted to make some overall comments before we get started so that you have some expectations about how tonight's meeting is going to go. How many people have actually attended one of these meetings before? How many have seen them on the internet? Great. So, and I think most people have a general sense for how this is going to go, but I think this is going to be useful. So I became executive director of the state party about a year ago, and one of the chief complaints that I heard from folks who wanted to engage with the party as I traveled around the state was it felt like the state party's apparatus was difficult to interact with. That, you know, folks were engaged and felt strongly about the Democratic Party but wanted to be able to have meaningful dialogue with the party's infrastructure. And they felt like, for whatever reason, it was difficult to do that. And so, as we started to have conversations about our platform and about redoing our platform, I took very seriously that criticism, and we decided to open up that process to members of the public, because I think the work that the platform committee is going to do is going to be very much instructed by the opinions of average, ordinary Rhode Islanders about the issues that are included in this document and the things that people care about. And so that's how we got here. And so we had our first platform committee hearing on March 21st in our headquarters in Warwick, and we've been traveling around the state listening to folks, and that's what this is going to be tonight. This is an opportunity for you to talk to us about this document and to talk to us about ways that we can improve this document by including issues that you think are not in this document that you care about, by talking about the issues that are in this document and how do we make sure that the language is stronger, by talking about the order of the document and its presentation and all kinds of things that I think are important and I'll outline to you in a few minutes. I do want to say at the outset that this platform process is a process that I hope will help to heal divisions within the party. And I mean that because I think one of the challenges we have is that there are not very many forums around the state and around our country where people have the opportunity to sit down across the table from people who they may or may not agree with on a host of issues and have a dialogue about why people feel the way they feel about the issues, what is important to them, and how they come to those issues. And that is the spirit that we come to this platform process with. So I understand that people have strong opinions on all issues, and we welcome those. We wouldn't want to have an open process if we didn't believe that it was important to hear from folks. But we also think that there's more that unites us than divides us. And I know that that sounds like a cliche, but it's actually true. I really do believe that. And that it's going to be critical, I think, in this election cycle, absolutely imperative, that Democrats find a way to work together on the issues that we care about. The stakes in this election could not be higher. Between the things that we're seeing coming out of the Trump administration in Washington, D.C., and the potential to have Republicans controlling the governor's office and making gains in the General Assembly on all the issues we care about, no matter where we fall along the ideological spectrum, it matters that Democrats are elected. It matters that Gino Raimondo is reelected as governor. It matters that Sheldon Whitehouse is reelected as U.S. Senator. It matters that we elect Democrats all up and down the ticket. And I hope that this document is going to be one way for us to start to get there. I do want to make a comment about the document that I neglected to say in Johnston, but I do think is important. And that is that this platform is an aspirational document. And what I mean by that is what we intend to try to do with this document is to produce a document that the most Democrats across the state of Rhode Island can agree on. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody agrees on all aspects of the document, but it is certainly my hope and my intention to try to produce a document that wherever you fall on the ideological spectrum, however you feel passionately about the issues, that this is something that every Democrat can get behind. And that's why I say it's aspirational, because what we're trying to accomplish is very difficult and it's not going to be easy to do. But nonetheless, I think it's a really important thing for us to try to accomplish. And I'm going to submit that I think it's worth the risk of potentially exposing rifts that may or may not exist in the party, because we got to start talking to each other again. And if we're doing that, if we're having a real conversation with each other and we're talking to each other, that's the same kind of conversation I think we're going to need to have with unaffiliated voters across the state. It's the same kind of conversation we're going to have with Republicans who have buyer's remorse about Agent 45 in the White House. And that's how we win. And so with that, those are my introductory comments. I'm going to, at this point, kind of walk you through this platform process and the actual platform itself. So, under state law, the Rhode Island Democratic Party is required to have a bylaw, a platform revision every 2 years. And it might surprise you to learn that prior to 2016, it had been quite a while since the party had been able to get together and put together a document. But they were able to do that, and that's the document that you're looking in front of you, the 6-page document that was ratified at the convention in October of 2016. I'm going to walk you through that document and give you a little bit of historical context. I'll defer to the chairman of the committee, who was also on the committee when this platform was put together, if he feels like he needs to interject on things that I might have missed, but I think we have a pretty decent understanding of the historical context. So here it is. What you start with is essentially a preamble, although it doesn't actually say that. What it says is what we stand for. And that language is really supposed to be a summation, as kind of guiding principles at the very beginning of the document that talk a little bit about what that platform committee and what the folks who ratified this platform believed the Democratic Party stood for at that period of time. And then it's followed really by a number of issue area subjects and the Democratic Party's beliefs around those issues. And it starts with jobs in the economy, which was the #1 issue going into the presidential cycle. It is followed by economics, fairness and economic opportunity, education and healthcare, a matter of choice, housing, veterans and families, support for senior citizens, public safety and criminal justice reform, civil rights and civil liberties, the environment, and finally on page 6 of the document you have ethics and democracy. I'll submit to you that I think that in the first iteration that we had in a while, I think the platform committee did a commendable job of trying to get down on paper what Rhode Island Democratic Party values are around these issues. That said, I would be remiss if I did not say that I think that there are some areas where they fell short. And I don't mean that as a criticism, I do mean that to mean this is a living, breathing document that should build on itself over time. And certainly as issues evolve over time and as people's opinions about issues evolve over time, this document should evolve over time. And so I'll submit to you that there are a number of different areas that I believe that this document can be improved. I submit to you that there are a number of different in terms of the actual formatting of the document, I think we can get better. and I'll submit to you a couple of issue areas that I think about when I come to this issue, when I read this platform, that I think would be helpful if we could hear from you all about your ideas. To me, the number one issue is immigration. There's not a single mention of immigration in this document whatsoever. And I think for a Democratic Party that is the party of diversity, to not have a robust statement about how we feel about treating our friends and neighbors who come to this country from other places and who feel strongly that this is their home, and making sure that we're treating them respectfully and appropriately, I think that's a place that we're missing. I'd also say, I think, with respect to organized labor, there is not a robust statement about organized labor in this document as well. And, for 60 years, the organized labor movement was at the forefront of Democratic Party values, and they're, I think, a vital constituency to us. And so for us not to have anything in the document, I think, is a little bit lacking. I'll also say that 2 years ago, I think most committee members who served knew that the topic of the Second Amendment and guns was an issue that we were going to have to address in this process. And everybody kind of came in eyes wide open, understanding that there was language that needed to be included. And we've heard from people all over Rhode Island. I suspect we'll hear from people tonight about that issue as well. And we welcome your thoughts about that. Protecting the right to vote. In 2016, we saw a concerted effort on the part of Republicans to make it more difficult for people of color to vote, to make it more for people who are lower income to vote, and that matters. We should be doing everything that we can to make sure that every single individual who wants to have the right to vote has the right to vote, and not trying to create barriers. So there are a number of different issues that are missing. I'm sure there are things that you care about, that you see that are in the document that are missing. We want to have a conversation and a dialogue about those issues, but we also want to make it about the issues and not about individuals, not about elected leadership, although I think that that commentary is necessary. The spirit with which we want to have this meeting tonight is about really trying to work on how do we make sure that this document is a reflection of our values. And if we can make sure that this document is a reflection of Democratic Party values in Rhode Island, then I think that this process was worth it. And so with that, I'm going to introduce the members of the platform committee that are here. And we have a few on our way, and I'll stop to acknowledge them as we go along the way. If there are things that I'm missing, please feel free to correct me as we get started. But then, I'm going to turn this over to you all. And we'd like to hear from every individual in the room who'd like to speak. We want to hear about all the issues that you care about. We have asked people to keep their commentary in previous meetings to 90 seconds, only because we want to make sure that we're respectful of everybody's time and that everybody has an opportunity. I don't think that we'll have that problem here tonight, but that said, I just ask that if you hear somebody speak about something that you care about, if you could try to add something different than what they've already added, that would be helpful, so that we don't have a parade of the same kinds of commentary. And my staff person, Jude, is out in the lobby. He's taking notes. We've been recording this. We're on Facebook Live, as you know. For the folks that have seen this on the internet before, I should say to the folks that are on Facebook Live, if you didn't have an opportunity to get here, but you really care, go onto our website, ridemocrats.org. You can pull down a copy of the platform. If you're on Facebook, you can log on, find the Rhode Island Democratic Party's page. There's a Google form that will allow you to make your voice heard on the internet. We're recording all of these things, and I think I speak for the platform committee when I say that they are going to very seriously consider all of the things that they hear here tonight and all of the input that we get around the state as we get going. So with that, I'm going to introduce the three members of the platform committee that are here, starting with the person who's the furthest to my right, your left, Sharon Rose.
Hi.
Hillary Levy-Friedman.
Hello.
And Representative Doc Corvasi, who's the co-chairman of this committee. And at this time, I'm going to defer to the chairman to say a couple words, if he would.
I think Kevin hit all the salient points, as he has in the other 3 meetings. Tonight is a night to listen to you. Tonight is not a night for interrogatories, but for declaratives. We want to hear what you have to say as far as input for the platform. One thing, I think it was very important that Kevin mentioned the fact that this is an aspirational document. I think in and of itself, that tells you a lot. Beyond that, the only thing I want to explain, and I explained this at the last 3 meetings, and the representatives who are here may add to it, but as Kevin mentioned, it was in statute that each of the major parties, after the primary, would gather their representatives and senators and create the platform. I thought that was odd, that a partisan procedure, creation of a platform, a party platform, would be in state law and dictated by state law. It made more sense to me that the platform should be created at whatever time, whatever method is determined by the individual party, Democrats or Republicans. I floated this by Arthur Handy, who is on one side of the spectrum from myself. He agreed, and we reached out to the Republicans, and they agreed. So there is a bill, I think, I don't know, we passed it on the floor last week, I believe, that it will be up to the individual parties. That statute will be removed, and it'll be up to the individual parties to determine their own platform and their own fate. I'm hoping that this will pass. I know that has, I think it's Senator Coyne in the Senate has put in a companion bill. I don't see it having any trouble in the Senate. I passed the House. I can't see why the governor wouldn't vote for that. I think it makes sense that the individual major parties, the Democrats and Republicans, have their own self-determination with regard to the platform. And basically there was bipartisan agreement on that on all levels. So I don't think we're going to be forced to have that procedure this year. So what you are participating in tonight is even more important, because that other part, the statute part, will be out, and whatever comments you make will be considered and included in a platform that will be created this year. So Kevin, you've done a great job, thank you, and we look forward to listening to you.
Thank you, Chairman, and I should say I'm tremendously grateful for your sponsorship of that legislation.
That was off the hand.
Well, your co-sponsorship of the legislation. I think it's really important, I think, for us to make sure that the Democratic Party has control over its platform process. I would be remiss if I did not recognize some of the representatives that are in the room. I have not done this in previous meetings because I always get myself in trouble, but I think I can handle it tonight. We're joined by Representative Ranglin Vassell from Providence. Thank you for being here.
Isn't it also her birthday today?
Yes.
It is her birthday.
I feel like
Happy
we should.
birthday. Thank you for coming all the way down from there. Did you pack a lunch on the way down? We're joined by Representative Kathy Fogarty. Thank you also for being here. And Kingston's own Representative Teresa Tansey. Thank you also for being here. And so with that, the formal speaking portion of this is over. I'm going to turn on a microphone and kind of walk around the room and just acknowledge anybody who wants to speak about this issues. As I said, I think the most important thing is, one, what issues are in here that we can make stronger? Two, what issues are missing? And then three, take a look at the actual structure of the document, and if you have recommendations about those, it would be extremely helpful. And just like that, we're joined by our fourth member of the platform committee, Lisa Tomaso, a former representative. now that I think that this microphone is
Oh,
gonna
I
die,
think, can you hear me?
so I'm gonna.
Okay. You might call me a single issue voter, though I don't just vote on one issue. But the main thing I'm concerned with is that there's not one mention, as you said, of gun violence prevention. There's a strongly worded statement in the national platform. I don't understand why that's not in the Rhode Island platform as well, with everything that's going on in our country today. You know, I worked in education for many years, and to hear someone after this latest school shooting say that teachers are part of a well-regulated militia is just ridiculous. That was not my job. And that, you know, I really think we need to work on that. I don't know if you'd like to read aloud that paragraph so people know what the national platform.
So I don't have the national platform handy,
I've
because
got
it's a
it.
50-page
No, she's got
document,
it.
but if
Yeah.
you've got the language, please feel free to
Your
read it
90
out loud.
seconds, go for it.
Sure.
Okay, says with 33,000 Americans dying every year, Democrats believe that we must finally take sensible action to address gun violence. While responsible gun ownership is part of the fabric of many communities, too many families in America have suffered from gun violence. We can respect the rights of responsible gun owners while keeping our communities safe. To build on the success of the life-saving Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, we will expand and strengthen background checks and close dangerous loopholes in our current laws, repeal the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act to revoke the dangerous legal immunity protections gun makers and sellers now enjoy, and keep weapons of war such as assault weapons and large capacity ammunition magazines off our streets. We will fight back against attempts to make it harder for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to revoke federal licenses from law-breaking gun dealers and ensure guns do not fall into the hands of terrorists, intimate partner abusers, other violent criminals, and those with severe mental health issues. There is insufficient research on effective gun prevention policies, which is why the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention must have the resources it needs to study gun violence as a public health issue. I think these would all be pertinent in the Rhode Island platform.
Who's next? Why don't we try and go back to facilitate this as much as possible.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, I think Katie wanted to talk.
No, I
Microphone's in
don't,
her
no, I'm
own.
not ready to talk yet.
Let me form my ideas.
So, my name's Alicia Ann Kelly. I'm actually an unaffiliated voter, and I decided to come all the way down from Situate for this meeting because I would love to affiliate with the Democratic Party, and I think there's a lot of great information here that would make me want to affiliate. However, the preamble, as you called it, it says these are the tenets of the Rhode Island State Democratic Party. And I know we're not supposed to talk about current legislators here, but I think it's important that there's nothing here binding our party or my future party to this tenet. And the unaffiliated voters are important in this state. 40% of Rhode Islanders do not affiliate. And I think part of the reason is because there is no binding to this, that, you know, we will hold ourselves accountable to the tenets of the Democratic Party. So if we can add information into this, in the preamble, that we will hold each other accountable, I think that will make more people want to join our party and then win the races we need to win. But until then, I can see many people not wanting to affiliate because there isn't much backbone here.
Well, thanks. I'm not gonna rehash what I've said about the issue before, but I will. I think for the benefit of folks. So we've heard this request a few times as we've traveled around the state, that the idea that somehow the party put in the language that this is binding. I submit to you that I think it's a mistake to do that for a few reasons. Number one, if you look at the National Democratic Party platform, there is not a pledge that is required of Democratic Party candidates. And so if you look at the 50 states around the country that have platforms, none of those documents include a pledge. And the reason is because, as I said before, this document is aspirational. There are folks who are going to agree with almost all of the tenets of this document. There are people that are going to agree with 80% of the tenets of the document. And why I think it's aspirational is because what we're trying to do is build some consensus using a document that says, this is what the most of us agree are values. Not all of us are going to agree with all things, but I think it would be a mistake for us to include a pledge in the document. I also think that, you know, our democracy works best when we have an engaged citizenry that understands where their elected leaders are on the issues and that works to do that education. And I would submit that I think that the party doing that work by having a hardcore pledge lets people off the hook. That really what folks should be doing is what you all are doing here tonight, which is giving up a weeknight to hear and talk through these issues and resolve them in your own minds, hear from people who may or may not have different opinions from you, and work to build consensus. And to me, lasting progress happens when we do it that way. It's much harder and more difficult to sustain progress if we do things like create candidate pledges. So I certainly have my opinions about it. I'm sure there are other people here tonight that have opinions about that. And you're welcome to share them in this space. I do think though that what would be the most helpful, and I can't speak for all the platform committee members, but what would be the most helpful is talking about the issues that are contained in the document. There will obviously be a conversation, I think, among platform committee members about what to do once they agree on a document and how they feel about candidates adhering to the principles that are contained in it. But you know, I respectfully, I disagree, and I think I understand why you feel the way you feel.
Hi, can everyone hear me? I'm Maggie Kane, I live in South Kingstown, and I'd like to sort of talk about what you just, so we can find some sort of consensus where we all can have a discussion about something. So you just talked about maybe not making them stick to 100% of the platform so that it's open to a lot of different people, but the majority of voters in the state support multiple things that aren't necessarily backed up by the platform. You know, you can talk about choice. We want a state codified of Roe versus Wade. The majority of the state, supports that. So I understand what you're saying, but there's also the other argument that a lot of these issues aren't necessarily brought to the forefront because they know that they're winning issues. So instead of they're held in the back, not brought to vote, not supported by the party as a whole, we need to codify that. We need to protect women, number one. We also need to, I believe that we need to regulate and tax cannabis. That is something that the majority of Rhode Islanders support. We need Medicare for all. Majority of Rhode Islanders support that. So I think there's a counter argument to what you're saying, respectively. So, and one also thing I'd like to add to that list is support. So we don't need our state resources and state services privatized. I think we, as a party, need to support that. Right? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the front of the room, apologize. I'll make sure I get to everybody tonight, so thank you for your patience.
So, in my estimation, Teresa Tansey, State Rep Narragansett, South Kingstown. To me, the platform is what our party stands on, and it is what we as Democrats stand for. So this document doesn't have to be a unifying document, in fact, in my opinion. it's not meant to be a unifying document. It is a platform. Well, a platform is a defining document, not a unifying document. It's what defines us as Democrats. It's what makes us not Republicans, right? It draws a line, a comparison, it shows where our values are. It's what makes unaffiliated want to choose between one or the other. With that in mind, 90 seconds, I'm just going to do quick little blurbs. To me, the first and most important is around gun violence prevention. We are, as of last week, a nation, or actually not even last week, but we're a nation that has more children killed this year in schools as students than soldiers who have been deployed killed. We've had more kids die in school than soldiers deployed in combat zones. 26 children, 13 soldiers, and that's according to PolitiFact. It was originally reported in the Washington Post, but PolitiFact parsed it out for us. It's long past time to include gun violence prevention in our party platform. Number 2, choice. The autonomy of women depends upon our ability to control when and if we want to have children. Say the average woman's reproductive health span is 40 years. That's 12 months a year. That's 480 times, I'll use myself, in my lifetime that I will have to avoid pregnancy. I have one child. I wanted one child. I've been blessed with one child. That's 479 months of my life that I have had to combat pregnancy. And I don't know how many 500 hitters there are in baseball, not being a big sports person, but it's pretty hard to hit 500 from what I understand. And it's a little more important when it comes to a woman's ability to have her life future than it is a baseball game. So I think that choice needs a more prominent position and statement made in our Democratic Party platform. Immigration, number 3. As a child of an immigrant, as a first-generation American, as a quote-unquote chain immigrant, because my father was brought here because of his uncle coming here and was able to come here from Italy as a result of that. I believe that this policy is actually what makes America great, our immigration policy. And number 4, I'm just going to put out refugees. I think what's happening in our country today is unconscionable. I think the policies that our executive branch has enacted are cruel and inhumane. The threat of separating children from their families, the idea of sending people who have been here because of floods and natural disasters in their home, even if it was decades ago, the thought of having to send them back after they've established a life here is unconscionable. And hopefully I did that in a reasonable amount of time. Those are the 4 I'd like to see with more emphasis.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Marcia Ranglin Bassel, and I represent House District 5 in Providence. I'm here today to speak about a few things that I think should be included in on the Democratic, Rhode Island Democratic platform. 1, as stated before, the issue of gun violence and gun violence prevention. This is a no-brainer. We've lost too many kids in this country, but also we have lost, and I have lost, too many of my own students that are no longer here in the core urban areas of the cities. So gun violence and gun violence prevention must be a priority of this Democratic Party. The second thing that I want to speak about briefly is we must decriminalize marijuana. There are too many people, mostly black and brown people, and poor white people, or incarcerated for simple possessions. Many of these people that are in prison are women as well. So that is something that I think we ought to have a conversation about, and not just a conversation. I think we ought to act on these things that I'm talking about. Number 3, choice. A woman to have full autonomy and agency over her body in the decisions that she wants to make by herself, with her provider, or with whomever she chooses. It must not be implicitly stated in the platform. It must be explicitly stated in the platform so everyone can see. And you do not need to look for inferences. It should be explicitly stated. With this administration, and as an immigrant, as a Jamaican woman, Jamaican American, I think, Rhode Island, we must protect immigrants. There is no two-way. There is a war on immigrants and people who come here in search of the American dream. These things are just core democratic values. All the things that I just talked about. And I love the fact, Kevin, that you said this is an aspirational document. I hope that next year or next 2 years, we're not having this same conversation and saying that these same things that we talk about are still aspirational. I really and truly hope. And that's why I found it was so important for me to be here and to let my voice heard, not just for me, but for my students and their families and my constituents. So let me just reiterate, gun violence must be on this platform. Decriminalization of marijuana must be on this platform. Non-negotiable. Choice must be on this platform. And immigration must be on this platform. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liz Gledhill. I'm on the South Kingstown Town Council. I run my campaign as an independent. I would say I identify as a Democrat, but I've been reluctant to join the Democratic Party, mostly because of some of the things that you mentioned earlier about this being an aspirational document and there being no real commitment to following the tenets of this document. Specifically, when we're talking about a matter of choice, the language in here that says a woman's right to choose is a fundamental liberty. We do solemnly pledge to support and foster contraceptive research, family planning, and policies that support healthy childbearing and strong parenting skills. That's a sentence that could be in the Republican Party platform. It doesn't say anything about supporting policies that protect a woman's right to choose, and I think specifically autonomy over her body should be in here. We could have a one sentence that says the Democratic Party will commit to protecting a woman's right to choose and have autonomy over her body, period. That's it. You don't need to say anything else because that covers it all. My reluctance to commit to a party, when you talk about some people believe some things and some people don't, what's the point of choosing then? I want a party that has a backbone, that sticks to their beliefs, and a party that's going to go to bat for me. You don't have to, each individual member doesn't have to personally have an investment in, say, a matter of choice. You don't have to want an abortion or know somebody or encourage somebody to get an abortion, but you have to support the law as it exists under Roe v. Wade and policies that protect that, because that's what being a Democrat is. And if there was something in here that was a commitment and a pledge to following through on all of these very worthy tenets, I'd sign up to be a Democrat tomorrow. But until that happens, I think that you're missing out on a huge population of people in Rhode Island that want a party that's going to stand up for the people. Thank you.
Sean, go ahead.
So this is, like Kevin said, has been brought up in every meeting that I've been at. And again, every meeting that I have been at is overwhelmingly white, right? And so I have an issue with a party pledge that is dictated by people who are not representative of the entire party. And so I, as a Black woman, yes, I believe in choice, yes, I believe in prevention of gun violence and things like that, but this can't be a situation where pledges are being written and dictated by people who aren't as marginalized as other people in the party. And really, each meeting that I've been at has been overwhelmingly white. And I'm not sure if it's because of where we are. We'll have meetings in Providence, and hopefully other folks will be able to come out. But I do have a problem with putting together a pledge for a party that is inclusive of everyone, but then the pledge is written by only white people. And so I do have an issue with holding all Democrats accountable for a pledge when all Democrats aren't involved in the process. And so that's what I will say.
And the only thing I'll add to that is that my hope was by opening up this process that we would start to address some of that issue, right? Because for a long time, I think this platform process was one that people felt like they couldn't engage in, and that kind of happened behind closed doors, and people felt like, you know, this mysterious wizard behind the wall that decides what ends up going on paper. And my hope was that you all would be partners of ours, because that's what I view everyone as our partners to try to figure out how to make this document better. And I hope that as you walk out of here, what you're hearing is that the party is trying to reach out and listen to folks, because we want you to be involved in this conversation. And that hopefully, again, what we aspire is that this document is truly reflective of all the people who call themselves Democrats all across our state, from whatever gender or sexual orientation or religious background. Wherever you come to the party, wherever makes you identify as a Democrat, we want you to walk away and find something in that document you can be proud of. Might not agree with every single piece of it, but we hope that that ultimately is a document that you can stand behind, and that our party's leadership, including the elected members of the legislature, school committees, and town committees all across our state, that they can all get behind this document. I hope that's the case, I really do. I wouldn't have opened up this process if I didn't believe that.
Hi, I'm Joyce Flanagan, I live in Richmond. I have a question for the chairperson or director, excuse me. I'm going to comment first.
Thank you for not promoting me, by the way.
I would just say pledges make me nervous. I'm thinking Tea Party, I'm thinking Newt Gingrich. I'm thinking that's not anywhere any of us want to go. And the question is specific to any of these items that have already been discussed. The question to you, when you agree that words need to be put in this document about immigration, how do you hash that out? And how broad, how narrow? How do we get there?
Yeah, I think, I think the short answer is that's why they get paid the small bucks. And I say that jokingly, it's because, you know,
You say that jokingly, but you don't get paid any bucks.
That's right. That's the other piece of it. Thanks for disclosing that. Here's the truth of it. The truth is that a topic like immigration or gun violence prevention or healthcare is a really large topic. And there are a lot of people who have a lot of different opinions about what the Democratic Party's position should be or is on healthcare. And so what these folks are gonna have to do is take a little bit of what they hear from you, take a little bit about what they know about the institution of the Democratic Party. And yes, I think, to be honest, it's gonna be a little bit about how they individually feel about the issues. And they're gonna create a kind of cocktail that ends up with language that they can agree on. And, you know, that's not gonna be an easy process, and that's one of the reasons why I use the term aspirational. I don't mean that as a pejorative, I mean it as, you know, what we're actually trying to accomplish in this process is very difficult. It is not easy to do. I mean, I used this analogy at the last meeting. I have 3 younger brothers, 2 parents. We all can't agree on what to eat for dinner. And it's not, those stakes are not as high as some of the stuff that we're talking about tonight. But I have a lot of confidence in the folks that represent you on the platform committee. And we have a broad cross-section of folks from all over the political spectrum within the Democratic Party. They come from all types of different backgrounds. Some are elected, some are not, some are in academia, some are not. Some voted for Bernie, some voted for Hillary. This group of people I trust to be able to hear from you tonight and all across the state and be able to get to language that we can all be proud of. I do.
I'd also like to address something that was said. We strongly encourage that people reach out to their organizations, their groups, their networks, and if they can't make it here, we still can hear from them with an online survey that will allow everybody to take a few minutes to reflect on what they would like the Democratic Party, their Democratic Party platform to look like. We will be looking at those comments. We will be taking those comments just as seriously as in somebody who's inside, you know, that we see face to face. And I strongly recommend people do that, because there's no way that everybody can come to these different meetings. Everybody has commitments, but that is one way that everybody's voice can be heard.
And
Don't hesitate to send them.
These are publicly available on Facebook, so anyone could watch.
We reshare them, we retweet them, we want everybody to see these things, we want to engage with people. I think it really is going to inform the work that they do, so the more people that come out, the more the people that have a conversation. I would say in previous meetings, some folks have even submitted language that they wanted to see, and that has been helpful as well, to see the different types of things that people put on paper, and that is certainly something that can help this process as well. So, but it's not an easy thing to do is the short answer. Sure.
I was just going to ask you, since this is the 4th out of 6,
Yep.
I was at number 3 and now number 4. What is the topic that has been brought up the most, if you don't mind my asking? I don't know if I could pull even the gun reform. I'm sorry, what was it? Gun reform, yes, okay.
Yeah, and I would say that for the people who served on this committee the last time, they will tell you, I think they all walked into this process eyes wide open, knowing that this was an issue that we were going to have to address in this particular platform.
Absolutely.
So I don't think there's any doubt that people recognize that this was an issue. You have to also think of it in context, and that's why I gave my comments at the beginning. Our 2016 platform was the first crack at this in quite a while. So this is not a document that we've been working at meticulously like we should. And I think when I said I was trying to be complimentary of the group, I meant that it's really difficult to try to figure out the sum total of all of the issues that you can get into one document in a short period of time. But now we've got a foundation, and we are committed to continuing to build on that foundation, and you all are very much a part of that process. I just want to try to get to folks who haven't had an opportunity to speak. And then I'll promise I'll get back to you.
Thank you. My name is Vivian Good. I'm a student URI on a new Rhode Island. I've been here for 4 years. And as far as the...
Go Rams.
Apparently. Not really a sports person either. But as far as the lack of wording and power of language in the civil rights and civil liberties, I'd like to see especially with the current administration targeting LGBT and trans folks in particular. The Democratic Party's support of transgender people specifically, as well as the LGBT community at large. And also some representation as far as people with disabilities, be them intellectual or physical, especially right now, seeing as the current budget is trying to strip $18 million from people with disabilities, which would just be devastating to a plethora of Rhode Islanders. Yep, so that.
Hard thing to get argued out.
I just want to add my thoughts about the gun violence prevention. I know how hard it is to get young voters to vote. I think this is an issue that resounds with young people right now. My grandchildren who are in high school right now, I have one grandson at Charo who was just waiting for a gun violence incident to happen at his school. My other grandson at Cranston West having similar thoughts. I think if we want to get them to vote and get interested in being part of a Democratic Party, we need to get this in the platform. I think that's something that they can get behind.
Hi, my name is Katie Collins and I live in South Kingstown. I agree with a lot that has been said, but one comment is the environment. I think there's a lot of conversation about where we get our energy from, but I think it's important to move towards model of transportation where we're not relying on fossil fuels as much, with biking infrastructure, public transportation, more rails, more investment in VIPTA, getting to people who don't have access to cars. So I think that's important. And just to return to the conversation about the platform in general, one thing I'll honestly say, I haven't read it as carefully as I wish I had, but it strikes me as, I wish it was less vague, I guess. I wish that there was really almost like bullet points. You know, these are what we see as important values, and not kind of as a vague mission statement that is hard to hold on to.
Okay. I'll say this very quickly, just to follow up with the avoidance of vagary. I will say single-payer healthcare, and then also as an educator, the Rhode Island's first step towards free secondary education is huge, but we've taken a first step. I mean, it would be such a game changer if all three of our public institutions were free for all years. I think and that's what I'd love to see Rhode Island, just something that we could go big with, something that we could be a leader. I mean, this platform would be a great place to put that.
Hi, Andy Boardman from South Kingstown. I'm a student here at URI. I lead the URI Democrats, and I'm on the executive board of the College Democrats Rhode Island. When we talk about the platform, to me it's important that we look not only at the current Rhode Island voters, but also look towards the future and try to make sure that we are making sure that the Rhode Island Democratic Party remains relevant to our next generation. And so I would like to echo some of what has been said already. Gun violence is something that affects a lot of young people, and it's something that is on all of our minds far too often. So I would like to see some language there on addressing gun violence. Post-secondary education, I believe in the platform it says we should go after targeted tax credits to lessen the burden of student debt. I think that the Rhode Island Democratic Party can go further than that. We have already started to with Rhode Island's Promise. I would love to see that expanded to universal free, tuition-free post-secondary education, including college degrees and career and vocational training, because a four-year college degree is not what everybody wants out of life. And then to speak to some other issues that are important to young people, the right to an abortion is, of course, very important, and it's something that a lot of young people are very fired up about, especially right now. So I'd love to see the language tightened in the platform to clarify that regardless of the status of Roe v. Wade, Rhode Island Democrats are committed to defending and protecting a woman's right to choose and her access to an abortion and to parental planning materials and contraceptives. And then just one last note here is housing. There have been a number of stories in the media recently about how Rhode Island is going through an affordable housing crisis. I think that's true. I think that affects all communities in Rhode Island. It especially impacts young people who are not buying homes at the same rates as young people used to, and that's because we can't afford to. And a lot of that goes into college education, but at some point we need to look at increasing the stock of housing in Rhode Island. And that means increasing funding for affordable housing, but it also means looking at what we're doing to make sure that the supply of housing is meeting the demand, especially for affordable housing. So I'll end there, and I will thank you all for your time for doing this. I think this is very important, and as you review the platform, I really hope you'll keep an eye to issues that young people are passionate about.
I think Hi, my name is Mackenzie Matheson. I'm a student athlete at the university, go Rams, and I'm also the founder and president of Feminists at URI, a new student organization. While reading the party platform, I found myself concerned with one particular statement addressing reproductive health care. On page 4, under a matter of choice, the platform states that these policies will make abortion less necessary, not more difficult and dangerous. This language mirrors the safe, legal, and rare mantra that arose in the 90s to resolve the pro and anti-choice conflict. This rhetoric supports the stigma of abortion, suggests that there are circumstances in which abortion should and should not happen, and differentiates it from other forms of health care. If we continue to talk about abortion as though it happens more than it should, it will only legitimize efforts to restrict access to this imperative service. Already, more than 80% of counties lack an abortion provider, which means that approximately 35% of our nation's women have limited access to this fundamental liberty. I've been disheartened to see some of our own party's representatives acting apprehensive towards reproductive health care. I believe that if we strengthen the language we use when we address abortion, it will make it harder for these representatives to get away with sweeping women's bodily autonomy under the rug. I would like to see the platform address abortion as a basic form of health care. Nearly half of all pregnancies are unplanned, and about 1/3 of women get abortions in their lifetime. Abortion is a necessary aspect of women's health care. It does women a disservice when we speak about abortion as though it happens too much, or as though there are circumstances in which abortion is and isn't acceptable. I would also like to see the party platform explicitly express the goal to expand access to this fundamental liberty versus making it less necessary. Lastly, I believe that the party platform should express an openness to new and improved abortion policies that surpass the standards set by Roe v. Wade. The party should be actively seeking and supporting new ways to strengthen abortion policy at the state level. The language used regarding abortion in the party platform is of the utmost importance. I hope you will consider addressing abortion as a basic form of women's health care and disregard the ideology of the safe, legal, and rare mantra as you move forward. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak that wants to? I want to make sure that we get to everybody before I do some.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn. I am one of the co-founders of the Woman Project that started here in South Kingstown. I bring my 2 daughters with me. partially because they want to know what boring meetings look like, what they quote unquote said. But I'm also here to say that I'm here for them. And so I'm here to expand also upon what Mackenzie's saying, and Teresa's saying, and Andy's saying, and a number of other folks, I don't know their names, to say that we need to do more for our children and for generations to come, specifically those in the cities. We, as you might know, get an F rating by NARAL because we are considered one of the worst represented states for a women's right to access to abortion, as well as, there's another fact there, as well as how limited we are. So not only access, but how the limitation is. And additionally, we have huge concerns that our representatives in the House alone are, 38% of them are supported by Right to Life. So as a Democrat, we're asking for not only do our representatives actually follow the party platform and support women, but they also support them in a way that are the expectations of those who are voting for them. So we as the Women Project are continuing to educate and make people aware of who their elected officials are and what they stand for. And we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Do the girls want to speak? Imogen, would you like to say anything?
Anybody else?
I'm guessing that the second most brought up topic has been abortion in your meetings, and rightly so. And I think, you know, you're hearing from the citizens of Rhode Island, men and women, that this is an important right that the Democratic Party in Rhode Island needs to stand up and defend. And again, the national platform has strong language in it. It doesn't pussyfoot around like the Rhode Island platform. I read it and I said, that is the wimpiest thing I've ever heard. So I think you need to get working on that. And this is a little off topic, but something that's concerned me, if you read in the paper or saw online the platform meeting they had in Johnston, and there's contention among, I never knew there was traditional Democrats versus progressive Democrats. And like you said, Kevin, we need to unify, but you can't say, you know, to me it seems like whatever they're calling traditional Democrats now are like wolves in sheep's clothing. Just get out if you're not going to support these things and join the Republican Party, because you have to stand behind the issues that are important to your constituents. And if this is what your Democratic constituents want, we need you to get this wording in here and rally around us, because, you know, we're the voters. And I really want to say I'm so thankful we have Teresa Tansey and Kathy Fogarty and Marcia as our representatives. They are progressives, and they're not evil, and they're not, if you're not progressive, you're regressive, and I don't want to go back. Thank you.
I would like to go on the record as being strongly in support of immigration language. I think that is as important as the other issues that people have spoken so passionately about. It is who we are. We are all children of immigrants here. It is how we got here. We need to preserve that for the future, and we need to work harder for the DACA children.
Kevin, I just want to add one thing. Since this whole Trump administration has come into play, and I think women have taken a hit across the country, and I think that the smartest thing that our Democratic Party can do in Rhode Island is to really listen to the women. If you want to build and we want to win and we want to keep our spots, Congress, senators, state representatives, senators, we have to listen to the women. We are being attacked, really, by this gentleman. Don't forget the Me Too movement that's happened. That's almost kind of slid off the radar. There's been so many different things that have happened. The choice issue, what's happening in Ohio, this is an attack. What's happening in Texas is an attack on women everywhere. So let's keep Rhode Island blue and listen to what's happening to women. Fair pay, equal wages, these are things that are important to me. If you want to keep, and you really want to improve the Democratic Party and you want to do something, I'm not downgrading guns because I certainly think we have a huge problem with that. But I think the key to this is women. And maybe we can pull some Republican women back to our side. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'll just say in commentary, I think you're absolutely right. If you look up at their platform committee right now, 4 of the 5 women, 4 of the 5 people that are sitting in front of you are women. 5 of the 11 people that are on the platform committee are women. We started a women's caucus because I actually believe that's an important constituency. Not just because of the Me Too movement, because I actually believe in inclusive politics. I think our party is stronger when we hear from more different, diverse voices, to Sharon's point. So having more people of color sitting at that table is also important to me. Having as many diverse opinions as possible, not just along the ideological spectrum, but also from different backgrounds and different belief systems. That's what I think makes our party great. That's what I think makes our country great. And so we were extremely intentional when we put this group together because we wanted to be able to say that this group is a nice cross-section of all of Rhode Island in America. And we hope that their experiences and their backgrounds and how they come to issues and how they think about issues, the thoughtfulness of their approaches is going to ultimately lead the day. I do want to say something really quickly, though, about the commentary that was made in the Johnston meeting. So I've read a lot of this stuff on social media, and I want to say categorically that I think it's really unfortunate that the conversation about that meeting has devolved into progressives versus traditional Democrats. The same way I think the conversation around the 2016 presidential election devolving into a conversation about Bernie Kratz versus Hillary Kratz was not helpful for the party. The truth is, I don't view the term traditional Democrat as a pejorative. I also don't think progressive is a pejorative. I think it describes a belief set, and that there are a lot of people who believe in progressive ideas who maybe don't call themselves progressives, and when they're disparaged in the media, it doesn't help the Democratic Party. The same way I believe that people who are on the more traditional or moderate or conservative side, whatever you want to call it, if we refer to them in a negative light, I don't think it helps our party. And I am in a very unique position. It is the reason why some people say my job is one of the toughest jobs in the state, and that my job is, to use a Game of Thrones reference, to be the protector of the realm and do what I ultimately think is in the best interest of the party, even if one side or the other doesn't really like that. And so the way that I view this process and the way that I view what your ideological predispositions are is they're all welcome at my table. I don't think the progressive table should have a part of the table where a traditional Democrat shouldn't be. I don't think the traditional Democrat should have a table where progressive shouldn't be. Because the truth is, if we really want to be this type of a party, then we've got to have this conversation with each other. We should agree to disagree when that time comes, and I know that people feel strongly about those issues, but everybody should have a seat at the table. And that's what this platform process was really designed to be about, is giving everybody a seat at the table to talk about these issues. And my hope is that when people walk out, they'll realize that there's actually more consensus than not, and that a party is doing a good job of listening to people. And the hard work of trying to build that consensus and get a document that we're all proud of, I think is important. But, you know, I don't want to get into the progressive versus traditional Democrat thing, because the truth is, in my neighborhood, when I knock on doors and when voters make decisions, they don't care if you're a progressive or a traditional Democrat. What they care about is, when I cast my vote, is this person that I'm voting for going to do something that makes my life better? And I think that ultimately is the choice that voters make. And some voters think traditional Democrats do that better, and some voters think progressive Democrats do that better. But we're all Democrats. We're all on the same team. And we've got to figure out a way to be talking to each other and have, you know, a seat at that table. And that's what we're trying to do here. And I get that not everybody agrees with me on that position, but as I said, I have a very unique position in that my job is really to do what I think is in the best interest of the party and the thing that unites us all. Because the truth is, we can fight with each other as Democrats, but there are Republicans out there that don't share our values on a whole hell of a lot of issues too.
There's a hand up behind you.
Yeah. Kevin, you actually said so many things that made me reflect on why I'm a Democrat that I thought are important to share. I'm a Democrat because I believe in the power of the federal government to make change that empowers and helps people. And the National Party platform has over 50 pages of different ways to do that, and yet we as Rhode Islanders have, what, 6? That's all we could do to help people in Rhode Island, and I think I don't necessarily identify as a progressive or a traditional, but I take a lot of strength from the National Party platform, and as a true Democrat who believes in the power of the federal government to make change when states may or may not be behind that, I think that's a fundamental value that's missing in our state party platform. And if we could take that bigger approach, it seems like we could bring people together, because this is about increasing opportunity for all. And we've done it at a federal level in a platform experience 2 years ago that was contentious. And we made a lot of good positive changes. And why can't we do it in a state of 1 million people? It seems silly to me that we're having an argument about going backwards instead of going forward. And there are so many points in this that could be amplified and improved.
Sharon?
So I was on the platform committee in 2016, and I think everyone should just keep in mind that it was, completely honest, it was a rushed experience, right? And I can remember myself being in a room that was just a few members of a party where it was like, oh, Lauren was on that, we were both on it.
We sure were.
And it was quite rushed, and so I do want to give kudos to Kevin and the current leadership, because this process was not the process that was happening 2 years ago. And so, yes, it's 6 pages, but I think that is a lot. That is because of this needs to get done, it hasn't been done, we need to get this done within a specific amount of time. That was probably like, what was it, like a month that we had to get it done in?
Yeah, I think we had 3 or 4 meetings at the most.
If that.
This has been updated from 2011, and we had like 3 or 4 meetings at the most.
At the most. Whereas this is a conversation, this seems to be like a town hall conversation where we're now meeting different constituencies 6 times prior to even having that conversation. Right. And so I think there are a lot of things that I know both Lauren and I argued about that's not included on here, and a lot of things as a Black woman that is not included on here, and a lot of things that as a person in the urban core is not focused on in this document. But I think us going out to throughout all the counties in each one of the 5 counties and really having these conversations is really going to build a more robust platform that we weren't able to do in those 3 or 4 meetings, whereas again 6 meetings and then probably another, I don't know how many meetings that we'll have subsequent to this, but it will be more than what we did.
Yeah.
And so that's, as a member of that platform committee, and as a person that was a millennial on that platform committee, as a Black woman on that platform committee, as a first generation college graduate on that platform committee, there are a lot of things that are included in this platform that I would like to see there, but I think it was a really rushed experience.
And there's things that's not in the platform committee that we wanted we wanted on the platform from 2016 that we thought should have been on there, but basically it was a numbers game, and you know some of the issues we were just flat out outnumbered with the other members of the committee, so we really couldn't push through some of the agenda items, and that's another great reason why we have these meetings, is to see where the pulse really is of the party and to hear everybody's feedback, which is critical, and that there is strength in numbers, and we didn't have the numbers last year, but we did try to make additional changes. Prior to that, the platform was 3 pages, So we basically expanded upon it quite a bit. There's 3 or 4 different issues in there that weren't on the other platform from 2011. So it is a continuous work in progress, but certainly not the fault of anybody who was on the 2016 platform committee that, you know, that it's a little skimpier than it should be. We really did the best we possibly could. So just get that.
I think, you know, in 2016, the Democratic Party at large got a lot of criticism for ignoring the underserved population, and I think poverty is a real issue, access to equal education. I have a niece who's at URI, and she was doing 2 practice teachings, and she was down here at a preschool and up in Central Falls. And she said it was like worlds apart. And I worked at Head Start in Woonsocket several years ago, and it just was such an eye-opening experience. And it just, I used to go home and look at my nieces at 3 and 4 and say, my God, at 3 and 4, it's so unfair. So I really, really think we have to do, I'm excited to see that the infrastructure of the schools is a priority, but something more, you know, something to get the more urban schools a better, just access to education, affordable housing, and the other thing is with the immigration, I think something that sometimes is forgotten is just the pathway to immigration, or the pathway to citizenry. I think your average American thinks that, like, oh, you just do this and you do this and then you're a citizen, and that's not the case. Something that kind of makes a more clear pathway. I don't know if that's in the state's power or not. Anyways, but more conversation on working class and poverty issues would be fabulous.
You had your hand up before. You had your hand.
Oh, they both spoke. Did you have another one? Oh, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of our conversation tonight has been about really great initiatives that may help Providence and the cities of this state. But coming from Situate, I feel like, especially with school infrastructure, I graduated in 2006. Bathrooms in my school did not work. I could not go, I didn't go to the bathroom. And no one would think that that would happen in Situate, but it did. And I think that this is an issue throughout our state. The environment isn't just our oceans, it's also our forests. And the platform really doesn't speak to our rural areas. There's some language in there that says it's encompassing of the rural areas, but these communities are also our Republican communities. And I feel like this is because the party may have abandoned these communities, including them and becoming more inclusive in our language, things like forest, things like reaching out to farmers, the turf farmers, for example, here in South County or in Northern Rhode Island, there are several farms, including them in this language will have a bigger tent. I know we like talking about the big tent here, and that's one way to get a big tent, is to include the rural communities, not just the urban ones. Thanks.
Want to be respectful of everyone's time. I think most people have had an opportunity to speak. I'll take 2 or 3 more before we shut down.
I'll have a second bite of the apple, if no one else. Just because I think some really great points were made, and I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't mention transportation, but it's looking at the scope of the way our platform was, it really was so small that it almost didn't really encourage creative thinking. So yeah, we should have. We're the smallest state. We should be the state that supports electric vehicles. We should be the one where there's no range anxiety in our state. We should be committed to that. That's something that's incredibly achievable. Public transportation for all. Sure, if you live up north, it's a lot easier to get around without a car, but living in South County, it's impossible without a car. You know, just talking about really equal access to transportation throughout the state and agriculture, right? You know, that's what this school is, an extension school. We really should embrace our food culture and farming and make that a part of our party's commitment. I think really all great points. Thanks, South County.
I will say this, public transportation in northwestern Rhode Island, nothing to be proud about. You can't get there from here after 5 p.m. Bottom line, the buses just stop, and if you can't have a late job, you can't have any kind of flex schedule. God forbid you need to get to Providence on Saturday. If you live in northwestern Rhode Island, you can't do it without a car. And that's just simply, there has to be a better system in the state. It's just too small to only allow access to, you know, several cities.
I leave the microphone. I can second that. I'm from North Smithfield, which is, you know, in that area, and unless you like hitch a ride on a deer or something, there's no way to get there without a car. There's no public transportation. Fortunately, the governor actually, her roadworks program did provide funding to renovate many bridges and parts of 146 in my town, so that was appreciated. But definitely, it's not becoming of what's considered a wealthy community. And also, we were talking about schools. It's academically a very good school, North Smithfield High School, excuse me. It's but the building is terrible. Hasn't been renovated in like 50 years. It's bathrooms don't work. That seems to be a trend. It's just, it is a mess, unfortunately. So that definitely is a problem. A lot of communities we think don't have those issues because they're, again, wealthy communities. They sometimes experience them the most. So that's what
Plug for Treasure Magazine and School Construction Bond. That's my boss. So if you want to get it passed, talk to the legislators.
One final comment before we close.
I have a question.
Sure.
So the Johnston meeting was overwhelmed with pro-gun people. What was their point? Because like my biggest question, especially as far as what someone said, is like you're crossing the bridge with those more rural areas, which are typically more conservative and like farmers. Like I feel like, because I was at the State House not too long ago, and there was a whole bunch of yellow shirts there, and I ended up having a really good conversation with a handful of women about the healthcare, the Reproductive Health Care Act, and they were very supportive. Like the only issue that keeps them from even considering the Democratic Party is they feel that we are anti-gun or anti-Second Amendment, which is very confusing in Rhode Island because you have very stringent gun laws here. So my point, like, what is their point as far as like coming to a Democratic platform? Like, what do they have to say?
Yeah, I can't really speak for the entire movement.
Well,
what I can say is that I think, to someone's earlier point about the way that folks in rural communities think about guns versus people in urban communities, I think there is a real disparity there. And I think that that's not just seen across the country, but I think that's also very real in Rhode Island. And I think that there are folks in the northwestern part of the state and the southwestern part of the state have a very different opinion about needing a firearm to protect themselves and the rights that come with that. And I would say that I think that view is not just represented in Johnston. I would not say that it is unique to Johnston, Rhode Island, or any other community for that matter. There are a number of people in our state and across our country who feel the way that they feel about guns, and I think our job is to try to figure out how to work with those folks to be able to make sure that, you know, kids don't have to feel terrified in schools. And so, you know, I think the General Assembly has started to work on this in a real concerted way. You know, last year, Representative Tanzi's bill about getting guns out of the hands of domestic abusers passed overwhelmingly with overwhelming majorities. It took a lot of work to get there, but it got done, and I think we're better for it today. And so there are pieces of legislation that are in the General Assembly right now that are moving. I think that are moving us in a more positive direction as well. But there's no doubt that You know, the Democratic Party is not a monolith on this issue at all. And I think the divide, frankly, is less about political party and has more to do with sort of rural and urban than anything else. But it's a fair point, and I would.
A couple of people that were, it was still pretty even. There was still quite a few people that were for gun reform, and then there was a couple very outspoken people that were against it. So it was kind of even, but it just, yeah,
and that's the other thing.
The one was kind of just like a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing that I'd say is one of the reasons we encouraged this process to be open is because we wanted people to actually be here. Because there's a difference between like watching it on the YouTube versus actually being in the room and having a feel for how people are talking about things. And I think, you know, it's true that even though there were some people who felt strongly about their Second Amendment rights, I think that there were a lot of advocates for common sense gun reform in that room and in every room that we've been in as we've gone across the state. So it gives me a lot of pleasure to know that validates the reason why we did this. It makes me feel comfortable that, you know, we're as a party strong enough to be able to handle being in the room with people who share different opinions about a lot of different issues and having a constructive dialogue like we've had here tonight. And so with that, I really want to thank you all for being here and giving up a beautiful afternoon and evening in May to talk about the Democratic Party's issues and concerns. And I wanted to say this, that you know, as I've traveled across the state, I've told folks that the Democratic Party doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to the members of the platform committee, it belongs to you all. And this process belongs to you all. And I hope that you walk out of here knowing that the folks that are sitting around that table are listening, that I certainly am listening, and that we want you to be a part of this process. So if you're on Facebook, we'll be here again June 4th in Barrington, at the Barrington Library, I believe. And we want you to be a part of that process. We want you to keep coming. If you've been 3 times, come the 4th time. If you haven't been at all and you want to engage in this process, that's what we're here for. We are better because we get to hear from you. The work that we're going to do is informed by what you say to us. And so, again, thank you all for being here and have a great night. Appreciate it.